Northern youths can't speak for us, says Southern Kaduna Group. Details on page 8. And the leading story here, Saraki, Nigeria's unity not negotiable. Presidency to sign budget next week, says Dogara. I'll pick one more story here, just below the picture story. Customs uncovers substance used by terrorists to manufacture IEDs, that's improvised explosive devices. And you get the details on page 41. Suleiman.
Yes, I have Independent with me, and I'm going straight to the leading story, which states, I will protect Igbos with my blood, Emir of Katsina. With riders here, Ango Abdullahi backs Arewa youth. Igbos welcome in the north. Abdullahi spoke for himself, northern elders. Nigeria's unity not negotiable, Senate. Now, the first picture story I have to my left, you'll see the headline there, failed in love actresses who have been there and back. Details of that can be found on page 9. Now, the second picture story, the gentleman you see in white is Chinoso Obasi, the president, National Association of Nigerian Students, being dragged out of the chamber after he protested over his non-recognition by Yakubu Dogara, Speaker, House of Representatives, during the special session to mark the second anniversary of the 8th House of Representatives in Abuja on Friday. That is much we can take from the Independent. Now to the back page of Saturday Telegraph. We have NATASHA on the march again. Of course, it's a big day for the Nigerian Super Eagles as they encounter the South African Bafana much later, and the day qualify AFCON AFCON qualifiers. Hoping that we are definitely going to emerge victorious in that encounter.
Hopefully 5 p.m. is the time, so we're all looking forward to it. It will be held at Uyo today. But yes. I found one interesting story in Daily Trust. Sad music for Tashe after Kanu ban. You remember, Tashe, the 10th day of Ramadan, it begins.
Yes, it's usually a wonderful moment. It's a very, it's a beautiful cultural, expression that, most young ones in the north owe dear to their hearts, and it's sad that not every part of the country now is doing that because of the security reasons
yes, aside that, some hoodlums are taking advantage of it. It's something that is being practiced, to celebrate and to enjoy the Ramadan period, but people are taking advantage of it. But it's good to know that the police is looking into it. Oh, I remember those times. Oh gosh, beautiful moments.
Yes, I know.
Back in Kano.
Exactly. Well, of course, when you talk about culture, it's always Nigeria is definitely a home of culture. And, in recent past, when you mention Borno State, hardly a conversation ends about it without a mention of insurgency. But it's good that peace and tranquility is gradually, being restored in the state. But now we are going to definitely shift our attention from there to the cultural expression of Kanuri women. How much do you know about them? Let's take this feature.
The Kanuris are known for their rich cultural heritage, which span more than 1,000 years, from the Sefawa to the Maize and down to the Elkanemi dynasty, which is now the ruling house of Kano Borno Empire. Some cultural practice, like dressing, cuisine, and interaction with others, are unique to the Kanuri people. The adornment of Kanuri women in terms of dressing, hairstyle, good manners, and good conduct are values that every Kanuri woman should possess, which will totally present her as an embodiment of beauty. Therefore, at every stage of development among the Kanuri people, there is a dressing that fits her age group. An unmarried Kanuri girl, for instance, dare not decorate her feet with henna, compulsory as it is cultural for the married ones to have their hands and feet decorated with henna to distinguish them from others, but unmarried girls can use it on their hands only. A typical Kanuri woman must possess some outstanding qualities like pride, integrity, and above all, self-esteem. Wherever Kanuri woman passes, a pleasant fragrance traces her movement through constant use of incense, locally known as kaji, which is fast becoming popular among Nigerians.
Kanuri woman is supposed to be a queen, and her duties are to keep the family happy, contented, well fed, taken care of. She takes care of the husband, the children, the extended family in all respects, whether they are in their sickness or they are feeding or whatever. The entire house referred to her as mother. She is the mother of the house. Her in-laws, even the parents of her husband also call her mother. Everybody in the family call her mother because she is now the mother of the family. She takes care of everybody. And there are certain types of dresses that she must wear at all times. These include the normal dress, zeni, that is the wrapper, and the top, that is jene agmaja. And she has to also use jene kalala, which nowadays called lapaya, because in Arabic, lapaya is in Arabic, but in Kanuri we call it kalala. This kalala will be the type of wrapper which will wrap the woman from head to toe. If she does that, she doesn't need in modern hijab or himar or whatever they are using. And it will cover her whole body. That is when she's not doing anything or when she's going out for functions or when she's going anywhere. But while she's in the family compound, there are certain types of dresses she will wear to show that she is really the mother of the house. She's well dressed, and among the dresses she will wear will include some ornaments. We have if she is a village woman, she will put the goto.
The ideal Borno woman is known for her respect, hard work, moral upbringing, and above all, God-fearing.
Although it is worthy to note that during wedding, naming ceremony, and other festive celebration, such traditions came to bear, an indication that Kanuri culture, value, and practice are still in existence. The Kanuri culture is what defines them as a people, and that is who they are.
All right, the ideal Kanuri woman there. And Suleiman, I know every culture in Nigeria have a way, they treasure and value their women. And you ask, who is a true African woman?
Well, a true African woman is dutiful. A true African woman is responsible and resourceful at the same time. And I love this bit about, the henna design being, applied on the leg. Once you see that, you should know that that is a no-go area for somebody who's looking for a wife.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, it's there.
Okay, all right.
But you should have them on your hands. You should just know that, oh, I can actually go after. Okay. They're very beautiful.
Yes, every woman is beautiful in her own right, right? Okay, so let's talk about the World Day Against Child Labor. Now, you asked this question, what will make a parent, send their children to engage in hard labor? Or what could be the cause? Why would they make their children go through that? The conversation will begin after we must have taken this background report.
The International Labour Organization launched World Day Against Child Labour in 2002 to focus attention on the global extent of child labour and the efforts needed to eliminate it. Each year on 12th June, the World Day brings together governments, employers, workers, organizations, civil society, as well as millions of people from around the world to highlight the plight of child laborers and what can be done to help them. According to International Labour Organization's data, hundreds of millions of girls and boys throughout the world are involved in work that deprive them from receiving adequate education, health, leisure, and basic freedoms, thus depriving those children their rights. However, the worst forms of child labor include work in hazardous environment, slavery, or other forms of forced labor, illicit activities such as drug trafficking and prostitution, as well as involvement in armed conflict. The theme for 2017 is In Conflicts and Disasters, Protect Children from Child Labor. Children are often the first to suffer in periods of conflicts and disasters, as schools are destroyed and basic services are disrupted. Also, many children are internally displaced or become refugees in other countries and are particularly vulnerable to trafficking and child labor. As the world strives to achieve the elimination of child labor by 2025, let's join forces to end this labor in areas affected by conflicts and disasters.
Yes, we must continue to raise our voice against child labor in our society because it affects children mentally, physically, socially, and morally. And to talk further about this, we have joined us in the studio barrister NATASHA AKPOTI. She is a lawyer and a social entrepreneur, founder of Builders Hope Foundation, a foundation that promotes child literacy in rural communities. You're welcome to our studios.
Thank you very much, Suleiman. Good morning.
Let's good morning to you too. Let's just get the basics right, the basics. A lot of definitions about what child labor entails. Now, coming from your own point of view, just to ensure that we are on the same page, what really constitutes child labor?
First, thank you so much for bringing this very vital topic in the forefront of our discussions. We'll say child labor is the use of children in businesses that are considered illegal and inhuman. And these businesses or these engagements, they trample upon the development of a child, especially with regards to the education, because it cuts across the physical and psychological aspects of the development of every child. So child labor is extremely horrible, and even though it has been present right from the generation of man, but it's not acceptable, and the vices should be promulgated and stopped as much as possible. We should be able to curb child labor.
Okay, now, in spite of legislative efforts and, the campaign ongoing to end child labor, it's still a major source of concern in Nigeria. What is responsible for this rise?
There are three major factors that are responsible for child labor. The primary factor, which is poverty. In communities that survive on less than $1 a day, an average of 7 members, that's 5 children to parents, the parents, and they find that the fundamental daily concern is feeding. So when you have a parent that can barely feed their children, then you see that automatically these children become sources of income. So that's why the primary engager of child labor is family businesses. You have parents taking their children wards to the farms, or they actually even send them to beg on the streets, to hawk foods, and so many other areas the children are being engaged. So primarily, poverty is the primary sector of child labor. And apart from that is the facility that supports, the societal facility that supports child labor, such as the inattractiveness of education.
That's the second.
No, it still forms under primary. There are two parts of primary, two aspects of the primary sectors. So you see that the public education, which actually should be free, because Nigeria actually in, I think, early 2000s, we became signatories of the IPEC, which is the International Protection and Elimination of Child Labor Act, which encourages that in order to curb child labor, there should be free public education, right? So that the inattractiveness of the public educational system actually is a contributing factor, because when a parent is struggling to feed, then you now have to ask them to contribute, to pay 1,000 or 2,000 naira for primary education. That's another factor. Then another major contributing factor in child labor is the cultural sector of it. In Nigeria, very cultural in nature, and we find that you are supposed to, by nature, get involved in your father's line of business or your mother's line of business.
At a tender age?
It happens, yes, especially from the age of 5 to 14. That's where we see a lot of child labor exists. So in the north, from the north to the southern part of Nigeria, you see children that being dragged into the family business line because it's part of their culture.
And we get to see more of girls.
Yes, well, I'm getting to that part. Another part of culture is where you feel in some sectors that, in some regions, that the girls are not allowed to go to school. So when you're already put in the poverty line, and then when a parent has an option of selecting which child to take to school, they feel, you know, the girl child usually takes the back seat. So they tend to push forward the male child to school. So that's another sector. Then the third part, which a lot of people do not speak about, is the macroeconomics aspect of it. The macroeconomics is when people look at the opportunity cost of sending the child to school as against what that child can earn for them. So you see then sectors of mining, the mining sector, especially in Nigeria here, that most of the Chinese illegal mines are being run by children. It's more attractive when a child works.
But you know, Barrister, we have the Child Rights Act. Is that really been implemented?
You know, we do have the Child Rights Act, and we do have so many other international acts, you know, but you know, there's a difference between documented issues and the issues that happen in real life. You see, like I tell you, when the basic iota of survival lies in starvation of feeding, you can't now tell people that, oh, because there is an act that prohibits child labor, therefore you should not engage your children in generating resources for the home. I know it's morally wrong, and it's extremely wrong. The parents should not support that, and the government should actually strengthen regulations to prohibit child labor. But we need to understand that some of these rural communities where child labor is actually predominant, they do not really understand that these regulations exist or these acts exist.
So how much awareness has been taken to the rural communities? Because that is where you get to see most parents willingly give their children in the bid for education.
Presently, because I work closely with rural communities, I think there's pretty much none. There needs to be a lot of awareness created down at the grassroots, because 70% of children that had been trafficked in child labor are actually located in the rural and neglected sectors of Nigeria. So it's very important that the government increases the awareness and educates the people on the benefits of, you know, allowing their children or their wards to go through the regular child developmental stages to become responsible and productive citizens of the society. And it's very important that we also, as citizens, we don't just rely on the government to do everything. We all owe our civic responsibilities to the communities that we all come from. We don't rely on government alone, and we call upon those who are better off in society, our politicians, our elites, the entrepreneurs, and all these businessmen should step out to ensure that their charities, organization, their philanthropy tailors this aspect of society which needs more demand.
Okay, we'll look at that as we advance in this conversation. But you have, you know, been in touch, or rather, we've been working with different communities to promote education, children education there. Now, you have interacted with these children. What is their orientation as regard to child labor?
Most children I talk to are not happy hawking on the streets. These children want to go back to school. They want to live a life of a regular child. And because I'm a mother of 3, and I understand when I see a 7-year-old selling groundnuts, and these children are very much aware of the dangers that they find themselves in. Because look at this, most children who are on the streets, we tend to forget that a time will come that these streets will consume them. And when the streets consume these girls, they become prostitutes. You know, they become victims of ritual killings. The boys, they end up being armed robbers. Most of these guys who support the Boko Haram, you know, they're actually children from the streets. So when these children are aware of what is happening and they're aware of the danger that they find themselves in, but they just cannot stop supporting their parents, you know, who they know that, oh, some of them actually orphans, though they know that, oh, their dad is ill, he can't work, he's got no job, and every little thing they bring in, even if it's 100, 200 naira a day, goes a long way in sustaining them for that. So my interaction with these children has been more of an educating factor to me, because it makes me understand how much lack there is there. There's a lot we have to do
And part of what we should do as a society is protecting the rights of our children.
Yeah.
And the theme for this year states, in conflicts and disaster, protect children from child labor. What does this say to us?
Practically, in the UK, I think child labor is like 2%. But in Nigeria, we have about 30% of Nigerian children actually engaged in one child labor or the other. So as much as we do have all these regulations and code that you've mentioned, it's important that we understand that some things, it's like a pendulum, some things have got to balance themselves up. If you really want to eradicate child labor by implementation of these acts and policies and all these regulations, we need to ensure that we look at the other societal, the other aspects that form the foundations that can actually curb this, like empowering the women in the villages, you know, reviving the local industries and these cottage industries which form the basic economics of these people, so that when a typical family can provide for the children the basic, they don't need so much.
In terms of conflict now, like children in the IDP, you can't avoid not having children do this labor.
Okay. Conflicts has been a major contributor to child labor, right? Children of disaster-ridden regions and co. But I want you to say something. Let us not confuse domestic chores and basic help a child brings home. We shouldn't
Are they the same
confuse.
thing?
No. You see, that is why today, as it is, it's very important that we understand that there is still a bit of mismatch in what constitutes child labor. Some countries like India and China, over 100 million Chinese children work in factories and all of that. And it seems when that particular factory takes care of other aspects, understand that, okay, you know what, we can't put so much pressure on that child. Okay, you work for 3-5 hours and go home. I think to an extent that can be managed. So when you look at a child who is for example, a typical family that's a victim of the Boko Haram, you know, the IDP displaced and all, we can't just telling the children not to engage in one chore or the other that will bring in funds. It's wrong. Like I myself, I'm going to use myself as an example. Growing up, at a time we had some financial problem back home, and I had to go home to the market with my mom to sell a number of things after school or Saturdays. I actually looked forward to that because I understood. I'm telling you, back right when I was like 9 years old.
So when does it become child labor? It becomes
child labor when that activity becomes harmful to the child's general well-being. Every child, I would want my children to work in a way that would open their mind to the entrepreneurial aspect of it. Because, like, I'm sorry, it's very important because people don't really look at the other side of actually getting your children to be active in one thing or the other, because gradually you build the value essence of hard work, the practice of artisanship and all that, which if you look at today, when you go to Italy, a child at the age of a 15-year-old boy can actually make shoes for you, and that's some sort of decent earning. But when that child now gets to work 24/7 or work 10 hours a day on that job, then it becomes a problem. You know, so it's all about managing the kind of chores or the kind of work or businesses that these children run. We understand that you're facing poverty, and we understand that your child's efforts are necessary, but can you manage reducing the hours of labor, and can you manage to ensure that the activities are not that strenuous to the child's physical and social well-being? We could also look at the issues of house helps. I know we mentioned that some time ago.
Yes.
We tend to see that children from rural homes are being sent out to become house helps or nannies in the cities. But when you ask most of these parents that, why did you send your daughter out at the age of 6 or 7 to serve as nanny, the response you get is, this person promised to take my children to school. You understand? So that is why it comes again that if we could probably have the government ensure that the basic public education, primary and secondary, is free, then that lady who probably has sent her 7-year-old daughter as a house help will not be in that position.
Actually,
it's a way, it's like two hands rubbing each other.
Sorry to cut you there, but most states in the Federation now provide
free basic education for children as well. But what really I want to get at is the relevance, the importance. I want you to emphasize on the importance of education for parents to understand that they need to send their words to school.
It is very important we understand that education, I could say, is the only way out of poverty. You have to be able to educate yourself out of poverty. So to all these parents at home, in the rural communities, they should understand that if they really want to escape that circle of poverty that has hovered around them for generations, they should actually send their children to school. Because educating a child is educating that child to the possibilities that are in existence beyond that environment. If you would permit me, I would say this as a personal experience as well. My father is the 8th of 13 children, and he was the only one educated out of that. He is just a typical example of what we see every day in the villages, whereby every child in the morning goes to the farm with the father. And my dad only had that opportunity to educate because he heard what was happening. The white men were around, and there was this whole news about schools and all. So he spoke with his mom to please enable him go to school. So here's what my father's mom did. She, after clearing her own part of the farm, she will go and take care of my father's apportioned part without my grandfather knowing, so my dad could go to school.
Now, education is still paramount in all of this.
It is.
Because if these people in the rural communities are educated, then they will understand the need for allowing their children to go to school. Now, way forward, what would you say to parents? What would you say to community leaders as regard stopping child labor?
As much as we can, we should step up the advocacy.
Yes.
We should speak against the abuse of children, because it's also called child abuse in a form. It's also child slavery.
Yes.
We should speak against that. But at the same time, it's not enough for those of us in the urban areas or those of us who are opportune to just put those words to them down there. We have to reach out and see where is their major lack. How can we meet them at their point of need so that they will be able to appreciate education? It's not enough for the community leaders to as well just gather them in a round and say, okay, these are the benefits of education, these are the wrongs that child labor does. If you want to sell something to me, I should be able to see the benefits of that. That is what I'm saying. These people at the grassroots, they understand the value of education. As a matter of fact, most parents who are poverty-ridden want their children educated. But they also need our support in ensuring that the education is free, and these schools that we send their kids to are actually equipped. I mentioned that we adopted the education of 600 children.
We don't have time, I'm afraid, Barrister. We need to go. I know you're very passionate about children, which is what you do. We do appreciate your experiences you've shared with us here. Thank you so much for adding value to this conversation. You know, it's been quite enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
She is Barrister NATASHA AKPOTI. She's a legal practitioner, a social entrepreneur, and founder of Builders Hub Foundation, a foundation that promotes child literacy in neglected community. Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
All right, we've been talking about the International Day Against Child Labor. We know that children are special gifts from God, so we should treat them with care.